Afternoon, everyone. Sorry about the technical challenges there. My name's Andy Curiton. I'm from Forest Technologies, a company I founded 12 years ago. We specialise in automation, based out of London, Singapore and the US, offering consulting, training and solutions around DevOps transformations, continuous delivery and continuous integration. Our close partner, Automic, have asked us to come and talk today about how to map enterprise applications to DevOps. So, agenda for the next sort of 20-25 minutes. The fire hose, how DevOps responds to challenges. Backporting alternatives, deciding what to do with existing enterprise applications. I've got a case study, try and make it a bit real, and some Q&A. So the fire hose. This is the analogy for the pressure that's constantly on enterprise IT, moving around between development and operations. Fantastic. Moving around between development and operations, depending on where the bottlenecks have been resolved. So, development, sorry guys, we've got an IT challenge here. Sorry guys, at the back I've got something different here and here. Right. Okay, there we go. Right, so about 15 years ago, software projects very slow and very cumbersome and typically always delivering late, putting the pressure on development, and they're looking at for ways to improve that and address that challenge. And Agile Manifesto, launched in 2001, actually looked to address some of those problems. But it wasn't for another 7 or 8 years before real tooling to support agile processes and principles was released and available, and projects really started to adopt it. I'm going to stand over here. Okay. So development have partly resolved the challenges around their software delivery by adopting Agile, and now the pressure's back on operations. Development throughput's up. Where are all these new applications and application changes going to run? So a study here from Gartner back in 2012. Server virtualization is in its infancy, and they expected in 2014 it to be in wide use. Pleased to say that they're actually right. But with that, so with virtualization, the bottleneck of how do I get kit has been resolved. But the next problem was how do I make sure that the configuration of those servers is consistent, and that's where infrastructure as code came from. The poster children of DevOps are all digital age companies. These companies don't have legacy, not in the traditional enterprise IT sense anyway. They don't have 30 to 40 years. You're talking 10 to 15 years, maximum. They're born and built on Agile, and most of them, therefore, are the biggest contributors to some of the DevOps tooling and practices that we see today. So, with virtualization and with infrastructure as a service, as I said, came the challenge of code consistency, and really some of our poster children for DevOps these days. So, Facebook, for example, rumored to be responsible for CF Engine, Chef, and Puppet in some way or another. Salt Stack from Rackspace. So these new age companies with their new age practices are actually helping us by providing tooling and processes for the future. But the reason for this talk really is that now you've got That you've got agility for web UIs, .NET apps, Java apps, etc. But systems that are customer-facing systems and processes that have been around in large enterprises for 10, 20 years, responsible for partly through merger and acquisition and development, etc. Those systems, DevOps doesn't apply to them, or so we think. And therefore, they're the constraint on delivering new services to customers. So I've got a real customer example. So we worked with a telco recently, and it was around, I think it was the iPhone 4 or iPhone 5 launch. And they needed to go from micro to nano SIM. And customers would request such a thing through a website. So digital, that's all great. That would be routed through by email to a call centre in India, where tens of thousands of resources would actually go through, because they had to manually enter in billing systems and CRM systems, etc., to make that SIM swap active. And the problem that the customer had was that one of their competitors could do it in 4 hours, but they could do it in 48 hours. And you all remember the hype that's associated with practically every iPhone launch. People want them, and they want them available immediately. So this talk is around how we try and bring some DevOps to enterprise IT. So looking at the challenges in a sort of simpler format or more real format. So data centers are getting increasingly complex to manage. There are more technologies, more servers, more devices as we've moved from mainframe through mid-range and mini and up through infrastructure as a service, SaaS, and now the Internet of Things. But the consumerization of IT and the expectation of our customers that has bred is going through the roof. They expect things immediately, yet complexity is going up. And this gap on the side here between expectation and complexity, this is where catastrophe happens. This is where a config change in the wrong place that wasn't quite tested at RBS means that people can't access their accounts. Probably something similar has caused the recent payment delays with RBS. Knight Capital, a couple of years ago, software release into production, $440 million loss in, I think, 2-3 minutes, led to them effectively going bankrupt 48 hours later and being bought by a competitor for a fraction of their pre-glitch worth. But in the context, let's look at that in the context of applications. So again, here we're back in the mainframe MIDI state. So relatively, just in case anybody works on mainframes in the room, relatively simple applications. And then sort of in the 90s with client server, it really starts to kick up, and then tails off again from around 2010, when agile principles really start to bed in and get some traction with organisations. And then we map that with the infrastructure as well. And we see that at around 2011, where we're talking about virtualization and infrastructure as code, actually really starting to get some traction there in enterprise IT, the complexity is dropping off there. But then we look at the trusted deployment processes for these end-to-end systems that have new age and heritage components. And they've largely got worse, more complex, because there's more technology now to integrate with. With older systems that are more difficult to change, slower to change, more costly to change, sometimes less SMEs available on the market for them. And you can see that there's a big challenge here. And all the while, the delivery expectation is quicker, faster, more for less. The fire hose is still on enterprise IT. They're managing to deliver elements of their software quicker, The infrastructure is available, it's consistent, but the bottleneck has simply shifted. So how do we backport DevOps or Agile to traditional applications or enterprise heritage applications? Really three alternatives that we see: rewrite the app, codify it. Everybody can codify everything apparently, depending on which blogs you read, or automate the existing processes. But what's the effort involved, and what's, how realistic, how practical is that? You can see on the left-hand side, rewrite. It's, really for, I don't know, for a telco billing system is virtually impossible. Codifying, again, is largely high impact or high effort in terms of time, investment, resource, just distraction from your resources and your business as well. But automating looks on the face of it, certainly from the work that we've been doing, to be, something that's practical. So medium amount of time, but relatively low investment in the other areas. So case study. Big document producing and information data provider to law firms. Global, thousands of customers, and an architecture that's evolved over 20 plus years. And they've got the biggies: PeopleSoft, Siebel, Informatica, core of their back end, global deployments, multiple data centers. This is not an unfamiliar scenario, I'm sure. Their next generation is web-based, SaaS interface. But guess what? It requires new interfaces and functionality in Siebel. How are they going to achieve that? The biggest problem they've got, their front ends developed Agile, 2-week sprints to release. Siebel, 6 months. You can connect immediately there. Moving Siebel to Agile is easier said than done. There is no full CI, there's no version control, and there's heavy dependencies between data objects for the repository and the non-repository objects. But the customer wants to align the front end and the back end development teams throughout the life cycle, so that the entire system can be iterating through every 2 weeks. So this is the analysis for this specific customer. So you can see, being pretty honest on the right-hand side, a couple of those lows did tick up to medium, but it was still very much viewed as a practical solution to automate the process that they have. And what we've done is we have developers commit through a custom process that's written that takes Siebel updates and creates packages from them automatically, which are versioned. Those are then taken to a Siebel integration environment where they're deployed and compiled, bringing testing far earlier in the cycle and far more frequently, fewer bugs, and regular automated releases. So for the customer, they get, and this real case study, smoother integration, regular working, better visibility, because once you've automated a process, you can see where you are, in that end-to-end process, what's happening. Has something failed at a particular point, checkpointing, restarting, etc. And more importantly, you can find and fix issues faster and easier. And I actually think the word faster is probably wrong. It's earlier. So much earlier in the cycle. You're releasing every 2 weeks. You're building and deploying every time a developer commits. So I did have a demo here. The screen's not really big enough, and having seen Martin's demo with Mark Rendell yesterday at the CD Summit, it's this being a recording rather than me building and deploying an application live, I shan't include it. So it's, I mean, it's literally just a small recording of, so logging into the system here, and effectively what you've got is launching the commit process. Bit small, so I talk you through it. So launch the commit process, select what you're actually going to, the changes that you want to commit through to Siebel, so which is here, and then from here it will create the package and actually deploy that out to the Siebel environment. And so this is how you get the end-to-end visibility. This is the process, and you can drill in and see everything that's happening there. You can see any failures, standard error, standard out, etc. And this is just a proof point on the left-hand side showing that the packages have been created on a file system. We don't have Siebel itself showing up on this. It's just a quick preview. So what does it give to the customer? Speed, consistency of automation. These are the same messages that you would get, with a lot of, continuous delivery and DevOps type implementations or practices. But the key thing here is that we're bringing it to, a real heritage, difficult back-end enterprise application like Siebel. So IT has changed. DevOps is prevalent, and I hope that the last sort of 15-ish, 20 minutes has actually opened your eyes to the fact that we can bring agility and DevOps to more complex enterprise applications.